It was such a beautiful weekend, but instead of being out having fun, I was stuck at home. For what, you ask? To teach Excel to a girl who doesn't even know how to use Shift key shortcuts. What is the matter with you? I've explained the code 20 times to you already. I'm sorry. Let's face it, you suck at this. Try to beat me in your dream. If I had to waste one more second sitting next to her, I'd go crazy. Look how fake you are. If you're mad, then just show me. Why do you always have to be Miss Friendly? Let me introduce you. That's Laura, my so-called sister. 2 months ago, my mom brought her home and announced, "Jeff, I have something to tell you. Back when we broke up for a while, due to your parents' hatred towards me, well, during that time, I found out I was pregnant. I gave birth to our little girl, Laura. I was only 22 and I had no money, so as much as it pained me to do so, I gave her away. I've never stopped thinking about her, and now, well, I've managed to find her." She dabbed at her teary eyes, then handed Dad the DNA test results. Dad was overwhelmed and ran over to hug Laura. They all cried a lot and hugged a lot. As for me, I just stood there in shocked silence as I watched this family reunion take place. It all happened so fast. How was I supposed to believe that it was just a coincidence when Mom suddenly found her long-lost child after so many years? "What now, Skylar? Stop being so headstrong." Mom scolded me, then rushed over to Laura and started cuddling her and soothingly stroking her hair. "It's not my fault she has the learning capacity of a slug. Stop interfering, else I'll quit teaching her. By the way, those loving mother-daughter things also? Cut it off! It's ridiculous!" I know what you're thinking. What's with the attitude towards my mom? The thing is, she's not even my real mom. A few months ago, something crazy happened to me. A strange woman showed up out of nowhere and claimed she was my mom. Say what now? Of course, I told her she'd got the wrong person. But when I saw the selling contract between my mom and her, I froze in shock. Turns out, my mom miscarried a child, but she was too afraid she'd lose her place in the family, so she bought me from this woman. So, I was adopted. It's common, right? But still, I don't deserve to be treated like that. I had always been neglected since I was little. Mom never hugged or kissed me. She didn't read me bedtime stories or tuck me into bed at night. All she ever did was snarl at me. "Go away!" I guess I convinced myself that this was just how Mom was. But then Laura arrived, and Mom is totally different with her. I get it now. I get why she treated me so cold and why I've never felt happy despite growing up in a wealthy family. Because I'd never belonged here. After the incident with the woman, I confronted Mom about it. "I get it. I know I'm not your real daughter, and that's why you think it's acceptable to treat me like garbage?" "Oh, please, stop with the dramatics." "Let me tell you this. Even if you did adopt me, I'm still gonna prove my efficiency to Dad and take over this company by myself." Mom was dumbfounded after hearing that. Then, not long after that, she turned up with Laura. That's why I didn't believe there was no coincidence. She brought Laura back to compete with me. And if that was true then, what do I have to be scared of? "How are my two girls? Skylar, are you still helping Laura with her studies?" "Yeah, Dad. She still helps me every day. Thank you so much." "Okay, that's great. When you move past the basics, I think you should take a few more extra courses. Do your best and try to follow your sister." There's no way she can be as good as me, not even in her wildest dream. "Laura is very smart, and she'll soon be up to speed. I'm also teaching her more about our family business." Huh? Is Mom going to teach her more to compete with me? I can obviously see her greed and competitiveness. But whatever. Laura and I are at two distinctly different levels anyway. I am an excellent student at the Columbia Business School, while she's just an uneducated nobody. Poof! Please! I have absolutely nothing to worry about. Mom kept forcing her to study, but... See? Speaking of Mom, she'd been acting weird lately. One minute she treats me like a stubborn stain she can't get rid of, then the next she's trying to set me up with some guy named Dean. He's the son of her super rich colleague. I don't understand why she suddenly feels the need to find me a boyfriend. And Dad wasn't helping the situation, as instead of telling Mom to stop playing matchmaker, he was encouraging her. Ugh! Okay, I just wanted them to quit bugging me, so in the end, I agreed to talk to this Dean guy. But now, he won't stop messaging me, and he's even shown up at the house. I suppose he is kinda handsome and nice, but he's not my type. So I just talked to him out of politeness. Until one time, I saw Laura sneaking a peek at Dean while he was waiting for me in the lobby. Wait. Don't tell me she likes Dean? Oh well, she's welcome to my leftovers. I don't like this guy anyway. Then one day, I was walking along the corridor when I received a text from Dean. Skylar, are you free tomorrow? Let's have dinner together. I was about to text back when I suddenly heard Mom and Laura arguing. What's wrong with you, Laura? Why are you secretly dating that jerk? Why not, Dean? He's a good guy. Besides, he told me that there's nothing going on between him and Skylar. So Dean is two-timing us? He snuck out on a date with Laura while flirting with me on the phone all day? What on earth? I tried to keep calm while continuing to listen. You're crazy. Stop this stupid secret dating game at once. What? Why is Mom insisting he's a good guy to me, but telling Laura the opposite? Well, Mom, which one is it? Is Dean a good match like you told me, or a jerk like you told Laura? He's rich, so keep on dating him and stop bothering me with your nonsense. Ugh, I wasn't born yesterday. There's definitely something wrong with this Dean. The very next day, I decided to go and follow Dean. Oh my gosh! What was he wearing? And why did he go to this slum? Then he gathered with a few other thugs. So, it's obvious, Dean definitely was a street guy. That's why Mom didn't let Laura get close to him. But why did she match him with me? Could that be a part of her plan to bring me down? Ha! Nice try! I'd had enough spying for one day, so I was about to leave. But then suddenly, I heard a familiar voice which startled me. I turned around, then... What? It's... Mom? How dare you ruin the plan! Mind your words. I did as you said. I told you to flirt with Skylar to distract her, not Laura. Don't think I'm paying you a nickel more. Fine, don't pay me. Just be sure to take me a picture of your husband's face when the real DNA result arrives in his inbox. You... Oh my God. Did I just hear it wrong? What DNA results? Could it be? I immediately went home and rushed into my dad's office to look for the DNA certificate that my mom gave him that day. Here it was! What should I do now? That's right, I had to take it to the hospital to have it checked. After pleading and putting pressure on the doctor, he finally admitted that he'd accepted a bribe from Dean to fake the test result. I asked for the original one and, believe it or not, Laura was not my dad's child. I immediately rushed home and showed my dad the original DNA results. He was so shocked, I had to help him sit down, then get him a glass of water. When he got over the initial shock, he asked me to call Laura and Mum in to confront them. But, oh no, Laura's room was empty. Only one letter was lying on the bed. Sorry, everyone. Dean told me the truth. Thank you all for taking care of me. Especially you, Skylar. I honestly enjoyed being around you. I think you're kind and patient. Please don't ever change. I don't belong in your world, so I can't stay. If we're predestined, we will meet again. Thank you, and sorry again. Love, Laura.
Unbelievable! How could you lie to all of us about something like this?
Knowing she couldn't wriggle out of this one, Mum replied,
Okay, Laura isn't yours. I fell pregnant with her after we broke up. I didn't want you to throw me out, so I paid Dean to get a fake DNA certificate. Then I paid him again to date Skylar and distract her from her studies. This business should be Laura's, not hers. But that jerk went and fell for Laura instead.
Poor Dad. He looked so heartbroken. Mum tried pleading with him to forgive her, but he told her the trust was broken and that she had to leave. Everything's such a mess. Poor Dad shut himself away in his office, while me, I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't stop thinking about all of Mum's lies. And what for? Money? Fame? Status? Are all those things worth sacrificing dignity, honor, and trust for? I used to want to compete with Laura too, but now it turns out that all of that was just fleeting. Dad, I think I should leave too, because I'm not your biological daughter either. I've known for a while, but I've kept quiet as I was afraid that you would abandon me. Thank you for always being there for me. You're a good man, and you don't deserve all the pain you've been through. Then I told my dad all about how I found out I was adopted and how my mom paid my real mom to hand me over. Dad froze for a few seconds, then calmly said,
Skylar, honey, you'll always be my daughter, and I couldn't be prouder of you. Please, stay here with me.
I couldn't hold back my tears. Did Dad really want me around? Even after all this crazy stuff? I really love my dad, but I couldn't upset him anymore. The next day, Dad and I went around to Laura's adoptive mom's house. I cleared the air with her and invited her to come back with us. She politely declined. Turns out she just wants a simple life. We still meet up sometimes, and we've actually become pretty good friends. Isn't it amazing? Because before that, we were like water and fire. The fact that I don't have to teach her Excel anymore probably helps. There are those who do whatever they can to win fame and fortune, but this often comes at a cost. Mum let greed turn her into a monster, and now she's paying for it. I don't like what she did, but she's still my mum. Well, my adoptive mum anyway. So I still send her subsidies and wish her happiness for the rest of her life. The truth is that I'd rather forego a huge fortune and live a quiet life than become someone I don't want to be. If it were you, would you do the same to live in peace? Oh, it's been more than a year, and this place is still exactly the same, I thought to myself. Suddenly, I noticed a man walking in front of me. He looked so familiar. Could it be him? Alex! I rushed after him and grabbed his arm. He's so gonna catch these hands. But as he turned around, oops, I realized it wasn't Alex, but a total stranger. Martin Henderson? I was so embarrassed that I couldn't even look him in the eyes. Sorry, I murmured as I ran towards the elevator. This must be fate. We meet again. I was standing outside the building when I heard a voice. I turned around and there he was, the guy I met this morning. Hi, I'm Martin, he said, and reached out to shake my hand. Before I could react, I heard someone calling me. It was Tom, my best friend from Vietnam. I had a lunch date with him, but I'd almost forgotten. Oh, I'm Lindsay. Great seeing you. Then I quickly said bye to Martin and rushed over to Tom. Lindsay, how's your new job going, and who is that guy back there? I felt so sad as he asked me this. I don't actually know him. He just looks so much like someone from my past. Tom rolled his eyes. Someone from your past? Oh, come on. Don't tell me it was that pathetic boyfriend of yours who abandoned you in Vietnam.
Well, what could I say? Despite what Alex did to me after all this time, I still couldn't get him out of my head. Tom could clearly sense that as he said,
Honestly, Lindsay, you need to get over him. He was a total jerk.
Suddenly, all of the memories of our time together came flooding back. A year ago, Alex and I had gone on an adventure to Vietnam together. We'd been planning it for ages, and it would be a long one, since we wanted to explore the country as much as possible. At first, everything was going to plan, but then, one morning, a stupid argument led us to a big fight that got Alex so angry that he up and left. I thought he just needed to blow off some steam and then he'd be back, so I just carried on with the trip on my own in the meantime. But days quickly passed, and there was no sign of him. And ever since then, I haven't seen or heard from him. It's like he just disappeared into thin air. Anyway, I had to pay for everything on the trip by myself, including stuff that we reserved for two. So I quickly ran low on cash. And what's left in my bank account couldn't afford me a trip back home either. So I asked my mom if I could borrow some. And that's when she told me what had happened. My family was in huge trouble due to some food scandal at their restaurant. The case was really serious, and they'd gone totally bankrupt. So my mom just told me to stay put in Vietnam for a bit, until things had calmed down. Well, that's how I ended up being stuck in Vietnam for a whole year, and the rest is history. I turned to Tom and smiled. He'd been so good to me. Tom, thank you for helping me find a job back then. You're a lifesaver. Tom grinned and said, No, I should thank you. Actually, you're the reason why I strive to be here in the U.S. getting my master's degree. And you know what? I still want to be the one by your side. Always. Geez, it was a bit awkward. I didn't know what to do but force a polite smile. Yeah, I could tell he had some sort of feelings for me, but I only considered him as a best friend. And look, at the moment, I had enough on my plate already. So here I am now, at the company that used to belong to my family to help my parents solve this scandal with their restaurant. I know the claims aren't true, and I'm determined to help them figure it out so they can get their business back. Until then, I have to deal with working under the new CEO, Mr. Garcia. Well, well, hello, precious princess of the Stewart family. Oh, Mr. Garcia, it's been a long time not seeing those greedy eyes. What an honor for us to have the daughter of the former CEO as an employee. I forgot to mention, but guess what? That rude man just happens to be Alex's uncle. So yeah, that's been fun. And there's something I just can't get out of my head. Alex's disappearance happened at the exact same time as my family's business collapsed. Coincidence or... I'd get to the bottom of it though. Ever since then, I put a lot of effort into my work, hoping to find some clues. But Mr. Garcia just never fails to give me endless trouble. Luckily, Martin was by my side. Yep, that's right. That guy I'd bumped into on my first day of work. He'd been so supportive, even bringing me dinner when I work overtime. I mean, how sweet. And the more time I spent with him, the happier I became. There was just something so familiar about him. Tom, however, wasn't happy about this. He'd applied to be an intern at our company, but he worked in the files control department. Tom was so rude to Martin every time they bumped into each other, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. One time, Martin had offered me a lift home, and Tom forced me to go with him instead, saying it would be safer. He was being so immature. But I didn't have time to focus on that, because there were bigger things at stake. One day, I found out there was a clue that could lead me to the truth. A top-secret document that was kept in the files control department. It contained all the business activities from before my family went bankrupt, and also the deals of how Mr. Garcia went about taking over the company.
I needed to get to this document. However, there was just one problem. The only person who could access the computer where this document was stored were members of Alex's family. Big problem, right? Anyway, one night, Tom and I were out to dinner, and he was acting really weird. Suddenly, he said, "Lindsay, you should stay away from Martin. There's something shady about him." This annoyed me. "Tom, I don't get it. What's your problem with him?" "Please listen to me first." Then, he told me what he'd seen. One night, he'd gone back to work as he'd forgotten his phone, and he happened to see Martin trying to access top-secret documents. "Request access," Martin had said. "Kindly provide the access code." The server responded. "Alexei Joseph Garcia," he said confidently. And then the iris scanner started working. "Welcome, Mr. Garcia. Access granted." Tom had watched all of this from behind the door quietly, and with just a few clicks, Martin had successfully accessed all the top-secret files without a problem. Then he'd quickly left through the back entrance. I couldn't believe it! If it was only the Garcia family who had access, how had Martin done this? And how did he know Alex's full name? Well, I needed to pay more attention to this guy. At least he'd gotten the file anyway. That was good enough for me. I had to get it from him. A few days later, I pretended my laptop was broken and asked if I could borrow his to send a few emails. I quickly checked his files, but couldn't find anything. Where could he be keeping them? Then one day, I saw him slip a USB drive into his bag. Well, that's suspicious. Maybe that was what I needed. That afternoon, I asked him out for coffee, and then I decided to drop my phone so that I could find a way to reach into his bag and get the USB. Unfortunately, it didn't go to plan. I ended up knocking over my coffee cup, and it went all over Martin's sleeve. He always wore long sleeves, even on roasting hot days, but of course, the coffee had gone everywhere, so he quickly pulled up his sleeve. And that's when I saw it. A scar running up his arm. I gasped. "How did you get this scar? It looks exactly like my ex's." Alex had the same scar. Before I could say anything more, Martin snapped and said, "What scar?" Then he quickly pulled his sleeve down. "Don't lie to me, Martin. I saw it. And I know there's something sketchy about you. Why did you access the server room at 10 p.m.? And how did you know Alex's full name? Tell me who you are. I knew there was something familiar about you. Just tell me the truth." "Yes, it's me. Alex." He spoke hesitantly, then asked me to calm down, but I couldn't stand it. My heart stopped for a few beats. "How could you do this?" I screamed. "Did you and your uncle plan this all along?" "Lindsay, let me explain. I got plastic surgery, but it's not what you think. I'm on your side. I want to overthrow my uncle and get the company back for your family. Please believe me." Then Martin, or should I say Alex, told me the whole story. It turns out Mr. Garcia planned the whole thing to sabotage my family's business, and he took advantage of Alex to help do this. He, Mr. Garcia, even made up a story that there had been a feud between our two families, and that my dad had tried to bankrupt Alex's family, which pushed his parents to the brink of desperation. Of course, this made Alex angry, as he was protective of his family, and it nurtured in him a strong craving for revenge. But after helping his uncle take over my family's business, he discovered not only that Mr. Garcia wasn't his uncle, but that he, Alex, was also an orphan. Apparently, Mr. Garcia didn't have any biological relation to Alex, nor did he know anything about Alex's late parents. That spiteful man just manipulated people in any way to his advantage. Alex was disgusted that he'd been used and lied to like this, so he set out to get revenge on his so-called uncle by changing his identity and bringing everything to light to give justice to my family. He then showed me everything he got from the secret files. All the dirty tricks Mr. Garcia had used to sabotage and take over the company. He'd even been leading the company down a dark path through lots of illegal antics. But then Alex told me that before becoming Martin, he'd bought a number of shares, and now he would transfer them to me so I could take back my family's company. I couldn't believe it. I immediately showed all the evidence to the board of directors, and right away, everything was resolved. Finally, Mr. Garcia was not only kicked out of the company, but he was also sent to prison for his unethical business practices. And it was all thanks to Alex. The person I'd held a grudge against the most had been the one to help me get back all that was lost. As for Alex and I, well, it's clear we still have feelings for each other, but after everything we've been through, I think it's best if we give it some time before we jump back into a relationship. Plus, Tom admitted he likes me, which of course was obvious, but I don't want to upset him. Only time will tell if Alex and I are meant to be. Ugh, look at them flirting. What an eyesore. But don't get it wrong. Trust me, this is no happy family. That woman there isn't my mom. She's Rochelle, our housemaid. I repeat, housemaid. But it looks like she has her sights set on becoming my stepmom. Ugh. We only hired her because after my mom passed away, Dad and I struggled to deal with our grief, and our clumsiness as well, so tidying the house didn't take priority. I suppose Rochelle was an okay maid. Can't deny that she's a good cleaner, and her cooking is tasty. However, recently, I've noticed that she always cooks Dad's favorite meals. Also, they laugh and flirt and constantly give each other these gooey-eyed looks. Yuck! Today, she even took out her handkerchief and attentively wiped my dad's sweaty forehead. Who does she think she is? She definitely wanted to hypnotize Dad. If she thought she'd have a slot in this house, she was totally wrong. I needed to do something about this. I had to talk to Dad right away. Dad, Mom didn't pass away that long ago, but it looks like you've already lined up her replacement. Didn't you hurt Mom enough by reconnecting with your ex right before she died?
What do you mean replacement? Brittany, you're being childish and unreasonable.
I don't know, and I don't care. But I want Rochelle to get out of our house immediately. She's for sure trying to get something out of you.
Okay, fine, if you insist. But make sure you find a new housemaid to replace her.
Ugh. So it turns out that finding a new maid who's actually good is nearly impossible. Dozens of people came to try out, but none of them were as considerate as Rochelle. Okay, after all, we still needed a maid, so I reluctantly let Rochelle stay until I found someone new. This didn't mean I was going to let my annoyance for her slide. I decided that while I was stuck in the same house as her, I may as well play some tricks on her to let out my anger. When she decided to cook, again, the divine chicken soup that my dad loved so much, I kindly added a little salt to make it more savory. But somehow, my dad still praised her delicious food. He must just be flattering her, right? So I tried it for myself. What? How could she do that? It tasted amazing. Ugh. Another time, I copied this trick I saw on TikTok by sticking layers of food wrap on Rochelle's door, then acting like there was an emergency. Quick! The oven is making weird noises. I think something's burning. Rochelle quickly ran out of the room and I couldn't help but laugh my head off. Her face was really funny. She then gave me this bewildered look and smiled helplessly. Ugh. Why did this woman never get mad? Okay then, let's step it up a notch. I decided to play the ultimate trick. Knowing that Rochelle was scared to death of cockroaches, I cut a cockroach shape out of paper and put it behind the fabric of her nightlight. That night, I was dozing off when I heard a screechy scream. Ah! Coming from Rochelle's room. Aha! Success! But she was so terrified that she fainted. Oops! Do you know what the most annoying thing is? Even after all the trouble I've caused her, Rochelle was still super sweet to me. She was always offering me cookies and asking me about my day and stuff. I felt like she was trying to play the role of a mother, and I didn't like that at all. She couldn't fool me. I knew she only put up with me to please my dad. Thanks to Rochelle, I could never be at ease, even in my own home. But recently, a very special person has come into my life and lit up my mood. It was totally by chance. That day, it had rained like crazy, so there were puddles everywhere. I was on my way home from the grocery store when a car drove whizzing by. I thought I was going to get a free bath, but then suddenly, an arm pulled me back and shielded me with his body. Just like in a romantic movie, standing there was a boy, soaking wet, asking if I was okay. Aww, he had totally swept me off my feet. We walked together for a while, and he told me his name's Chris, and he lives in the next neighborhood. That's it! I needed to find a way to impress Chris and also thank him for helping me. So, after some careful thinking, I decided to bake him a cake. I'd seen Rochelle bake before. It looked easy peasy. So I baked one and gave some to my best friend Sue to try. But she spat it out and said, "Ew, gross." I sadly sat in the kitchen, staring at my pathetic cake, and wondered where I'd done wrong. That's when Rochelle stepped into the room. But to my surprise, instead of laughing at me, she patted me on the shoulder.
Come here. I'll teach you how to cook.
Rochelle was a good cook, so I'd be stupid not to learn from her. This doesn't mean I like her, though. I just want to win my crush's heart. So after that, each day after school, Rochelle gave me a cooking lesson. Okay, so maybe she wasn't as bad as I first thought. We tried out different recipes together and came up with our own perfect formula. And finally, I could bake a lovely heart-shaped chocolate cake by myself to confess my love to Chris. And you know what? He said yes. I was so deeply in love with Chris that I totally forgot about my conflict with Rochelle. Chris often came over to my place. My dad and Rochelle loved him. So now, besides my dad's favorite food, Rochelle also makes Chris's favorites too. She's incredible. She could remember everything Chris loves and hates, even the trivia, like he's allergic to peanuts. We were just like a family, and I have to admit, it felt kinda good. And then, out of literally nowhere, the shock of my life happened. My dad passed away from cancer. I didn't even know he was ill. As you might guess, I totally broke down and didn't want to do anything after that. My mom and dad had both left me, just within a single year. But at least I still had Rochelle and Chris beside me. Rochelle took care of me like I was her actual daughter. I was going through such a tough time in life, but having them around made me feel like I wasn't completely alone. The grief had to fade away eventually, and it's gonna be okay from now on, I thought. Until one day, I was baking cupcakes when my dad's lawyer appeared and showed me the will. Turns out, my dad had left the house to me, but only on the condition that I had a guardian, some woman named Laura. Huh? That's odd. I don't know anyone named Laura, but wait, I think I've heard this name from someone. Oh, my mom. When she was in her last days, Mom once told me that my dad had been talking to his ex again, and her name was Laura. Could it be her? Did he seriously make his ex my guardian? Unbelievable! I had to get to the bottom of this. But how could I find this mystery Laura? I had no family. Well, besides my Uncle Colin, who was living in France. So I contacted him and told him everything. He flew back at once, and although I hadn't seen him in years, I couldn't hold back my emotions and ended up sobbing on his shoulder. And then he told me the horrible truth. Laura is none other than the woman who had just walked through the door. It was Rochelle, the woman who had been living in my house. I couldn't believe my ears. What on earth is going on? So Rochelle moving in was no coincidence? My dad sneakily snuck her in as a maid so they could be together? My pain and disappointment were overwhelming, but I had to calm down so I could think rationally. I knew I needed to be smart and outplay Rochelle at her own game. Since then, I started watching Rochelle and noticed something strange. Rochelle and Chris were a bit too close and intimate. I often saw them whispering to each other when they thought I wasn't looking. What did this mean? Could it be that Rochelle was trying to coax my boyfriend into one of her dark schemes? Or, worse still, was the guy I loved cheating on me with an older woman? My suspicions deepened when a few days later, Chris told me he was sick, so I had to take the school bus for a couple of days. And Rochelle also asked me for a few days off. Could it just be coincidence? I didn't think so, so I decided to be a detective for once. Right after Rochelle left, I started following her, and with no surprise, she went to my boyfriend's house.
Hi, Mom!
Excuse me? Mom? She's his mom? So that means she not only flirted with my father, but also planted her son to distract me to take over my family's property? I trusted them. How could they be so cruel? Suddenly, I remembered a detail that I didn't notice until now. After eating the food she'd cooked, for some reason, my father became weaker and weaker and eventually passed away. Did she poison him? If that's the case, then she really is a poisonous snake in human disguise. I immediately broke up with Chris and fired Rochelle, then went home and told Uncle Colin everything. At least I had him on my side.
Now what we need to do is refute her custody of the property. I'll take care of everything, and you just have to do what I say.
Then, Uncle Colin helped me prepare a lawsuit against Rochelle and her son for fraud. Those two will pay the price for what they did to my father and me. Oh, but the thing is, now Rochelle didn't live here. It felt so empty. I was so angry with her, but I also found myself missing her too. I loved and trusted her. And Chris too. And feelings like that don't just vanish overnight, but when I was still thinking about it, there was the lawyer. Again! And he was accompanied by Uncle Colin. What's happening now?
Miss Brittany Jensen hereby transfers the entire estate of 25 Oakwell House to Mr. Colin Jensen, as signed by both parties.
Huh? Signed? When did I sign that? I snatched the paper and shouted, "Scam! I never saw this paper! Uncle, what is this? Please say something."
I don't know. Just follow the legal documents.
No. So Uncle Colin was just pretending to care, when really he just wanted to trick me into signing over my house? Oh God. Thinking about it, it must have been that day. The day where he gave me a bunch of papers to sign, claiming that they were about me suing Rochelle and Chris. OMG, the lying con! At the time, I'd been so upset that I only skimmed the first page without looking at the following ones. I was too careless.
From tomorrow, Miss Brittany Jensen will have to return all assets to Mr. Colin Jensen. You have 24 hours to prepare.
I tried shouting at my uncle, and then I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't care. He just smirked at me and told me that he was just taking what was rightfully his. Ugh, what a vile man. So now, I have nothing left. I was kicked out of my own house and deceived by my own uncle. I don't know why I accidentally passed Chris's house just as he opened the door to take a delivery, and our eyes met. I turned and started to run away, but Chris caught up with me and grabbed my hand. Even after the awful way I treated them both, Rochelle and Chris still invited me inside and made me dinner. I ashamedly told them what happened. Then Rochelle told me everything. It turns out that my father found out that he had cancer a while ago, but he didn't tell me because he saw how upset I was after losing Mom, and he was afraid I would worry too much. Rochelle saw his health deteriorating and figured out what was wrong, so she volunteered to take care of him because she still cared for him. But as a friend, nothing more. As for the will, my dad understood Uncle Colin all too well and didn't trust him. so he gave custody to Rochelle. But unexpectedly, in the end, I still stupidly fell into his trap.
As for Chris, I really didn't know you two knew each other until you brought him home. But at that time, I didn't want to confess I was his mother and affect your relationship. I'm sorry, Brittany.
Britt, please stay here with me and Mom. We'll get through this tough time together, okay?
That's right, darling. No matter what, we'll never abandon you.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood you both.
It's okay. Everything will be fine from now on. You'll never have to do this alone.
Yeah, every dog has its day. This is totally not wrong. My life is nothing like my previous wealthy one, but I have something that my conniving, vulturous uncle doesn't have, and that's people who love and care about me. What my uncle did was wrong, and Rochelle and Chris are helping me to make a legal case against him. As for now, well, I still haven't given up on my passion for cooking, and still practice with my master every day. And you know what? I just won first prize at the city cooking competition. Right, I better go, as I have a big treat planned for
Dad, where have you been? I was so worried.
Go away. Don't touch me.
I froze on the spot, not understanding why my once kind-hearted father was being so cold toward me. I snapped out of my daze and tried helping him forward, but he flinched me away. My eyes started to tear up, and I didn't know what to do. Then another woman appeared. She quickly helped him up and smiled at me. Don't worry, sweetie. I'll take care of him. Excuse me? Who was she? My mother had barely been put in the ground, and Dad had already moved on? I couldn't watch any more of this, so I quickly left the room. How could things go downhill this quickly? My life used to be so simple and perfect. I had a loving family. I was always on top at school. People always complimented me on how I inherited both the beauty and intelligence of my mom and dad. But then a traffic accident happened and took Mom away from us. Ever since then, my polite, well-mannered, loving dad changed into a cruel, bitter drunk who seemed to despise me. The next day, I arrived home from school with the worry about what state my dad would be in. But, why was Uncle Alfred on my doorstep? I invited him inside, and there was Dad, slumped on the couch, surrounded by empty beer cans. As soon as he saw us, he slurred out and started throwing the cans at us. Uncle Alfred then took me to dinner so we could have a talk, and I couldn't help the tears as I blurted out how bad things were at home. He patted my arm and said,
Your father's been through a lot. I think it's best if we give him time to sort himself out. I think you should come live with us for a while.
So that's how I ended up living with Uncle Alfred, Aunt Madeline, and my cousin Charity. At first, everything seemed fine. As bad as it sounds, it was a relief to be away from Dad and to be able to properly process my thoughts for once. I was so grateful to Uncle Alfred for giving me a second home. But then he went away on a business trip, and everything changed. I was walking back to my room when Charity appeared in her doorway and tripped me up. As I stumbled and landed on my hands and knees, she snorted out, Yes, that's right. Bow down to your queen, you hideous peasant. You should know your place in this house. Ugh, that girl was such a pain. Since her dad went away, she wouldn't quit tormenting me. It's ironic that her name is Charity, but she doesn't seem kind at all. I'd had enough of her cruel jibes. This had just got personal. So I angrily replied, I know you're just jealous of me because your grades suck and you're not as pretty. Charity's eyes welled up. Then she shoved past me and ran to her mom. I followed after her and explained what happened to my Aunt Madeline. She frowned at Charity, then scolded her. Phew. Fortunately, I had Aunt Madeline on my side. Anyway, justice is served, right? Wrong, as it wasn't long before my aunt's attitude changed toward me too. One time, I was helping my aunt cook a casserole when the doorbell rang. It turned out to be an old friend of my aunt. As soon as she saw me, she happily said, Wow, it's only been a few years, but Charity sure has grown up. The older she gets, the more she looks like Alfred, doesn't she? Look at her eyes and smile. I stared at Aunt Madeline in confusion and saw her mood immediately shift. That night when I brought the casserole dish out, Aunt Madeline took one bite, then spat it into a napkin. You're clumsy, thoughtless, and now an awful cook? Be a bit more useful, will you? I stared at her open-mouthed, unable to find the words to say. Then Charity piped in, Please, never make this again. Casserole is so gross. Just like you. Then she smirked at me as she dumped the entire plate into the trash. Weird. Didn't Aunt Madeline tell me to cook this because it was Charity's favorite? Ugh, it seemed like life in this house wasn't going to get any easier. Over the next week, their mocking and snide comments continued. One day I styled my hair in a different way, and Charity sniggered at me. "What's that? It looks like you got a lobster on your head." Have you ever considered dyeing your hair, by the way? Because blonde really doesn't suit you. On another occasion, I was invited to a party, so I put on this cute dress, but when I walked downstairs in it, they both stared at me. My aunt said, "Oh, dear. Is that piece of rag making you look even chubbier than usual? Or is it because you've been so well fed living with us?" Another time, I was sitting at the breakfast table, dabbing lip gloss onto my lips, when Charity yanked it off me. As I tried to grab it back, she sniggered out, "What for? Putting this on your gross lips just makes you look desperate. No one wants to kiss you anyway." Gosh, my patience with this girl was wearing very thin. Worse still, Aunt Madeline overheard the whole thing, but she just laughed. I didn't understand why they were being like this. I knew I wasn't ugly or fat, and far from it. I know I'm pretty, as I was always complimented on my glossy long hair. Well, until I moved here, anyway. This was so confusing. Why were they jealous of me? It turns out that being too beautiful was not easy. Ugh. Things got trickier when my dad, who's also the school principal, returned to work after his time off. He totally ignored me, and it made me feel terrible. Then I arrived home from school to Aunt Madeline fussing over me and asking if I wanted anything to eat. Huh? What? Oh, I see. Uncle Alfred was back from his work trip. Ugh! It was time I exposed this mother-daughter duo's fake act once and for all. So that evening, I volunteered to cook. Yep, you guessed it. I made the casserole dish. As I brought it out, Charity accidentally shouted, "Ew! I already told you I hate this dish." Aunt Madeline turned pale, and Charity gave this gawping, shocked look. Then I dropped to my knees and pleaded, "I know I'm wrong. Please don't punish me anymore. I don't want to sleep in the basement again." Uncle Alfred looked very confused, so I continued. "I forgot that Charity hates this dish. I've been punished several times, but I still keep on messing up. I'm the one to blame." "What is this? I go away for a few weeks and come back to carnage?" He ordered Aunt Madeline into their room for a private chat. "We're not even related. Don't expect my mother and I to be nice to you," she said, then stormed off. What? What did Charity mean? Of course we were related. Aunt Madeline was my dad's sister, right? I wanted to know what was going on, so I hid behind the door and listened in on their conversation. "Tell me the truth. Teresa is your child with Claire, isn't she?" I was taken aback. Claire? My mother? Had I misheard her? "I know. Mark told me. The day Claire had the accident, they ran some blood tests, and he found out Teresa's blood type didn't match his. Obviously, she's not his biological daughter, and she looks just like you. Now tell me, did you and Claire cheat behind our backs? You used to be in love with her before you married me. So Dad treated me like that because he found out I'm not his own daughter? And Alfred and my mom used to be in love before she got married to my dad? Explain to me!" "Enough!" Alfred finally spoke up. "I have nothing to explain to you." Hearing footsteps toward me, I rushed to my room, closed the door, then crawled into my blanket pretending to be asleep. Suddenly, I heard the door open. It was Alfred. "Teresa, let's get out of here." I packed a bag and left with my Uncle Alfred. We moved into a small apartment not too far from his house. Even though he took care of me a lot, he never mentioned that day ever again. I didn't dare to ask either. So we just let it slide. He had to be my real dad, right? He just wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I tried to avoid Charity as much as possible, but this wasn't always easy as we went to the same school. It wasn't like I was scared of her or anything, it was just awkward. Then one day, I walked along the corridor to see flyers stuck to lockers, doors, windows, and floating around the floor. They all had a picture of my face on them, and scrawled across them was, "This fraud is the product of her cheating mom and a married man." Everyone was giving me dirty looks and whispering about me. I panicked and rushed out of there, but I wasn't looking where I was going and bumped straight into a jock, and standing next to him was Charity. "Enjoy the fame? These flyers were specially made for you. Right at that moment, my father appeared holding a flyer. He waved it in front of her. What is this? Who allows you to trash the school with this rubbish? Leave Teresa alone. I couldn't cope with my father right now, so I ran off to class. That afternoon, I heard the school speaker announce that everything written on the flyers was lies, and Charity would be in detention. Once the last bell rang, I just wanted to get home and hide away from the world. But as I walked outside, I saw my dad waiting for me at the gate. I had nothing to say to him, so I ignored him and walked off.
Please, Teresa, at least hear me out.
I stopped on the spot, then walked over to him. I guess it was time I found out the truth. So, turns out, yes, I'm not his daughter, but I wasn't Uncle Alfred's daughter either.
I found this, and it made me feel so guilty,
he said. He showed me an artificial insemination certificate file. Turns out after years of trying, my parents went to run some tests, and my dad was diagnosed as infertile. Mom didn't want him to be upset, so she secretly got artificial insemination and gave birth to me.
It was never your mom's fault, and I was wrong to treat you like that. I'm so sorry.
A fresh ran of tears streamed down my face with each word I heard from him.
Teresa, I'm so sorry that us adults, selfishness and bitterness has hurt you.
Startled, I turned around to find that Uncle Alfred was already there behind me. I guess he'd come to pick me up, and I didn't notice since I was talking to my dad. He must have heard the whole story.
Alfred and I will do anything to make it up to you. Even if you want to find your biological dad, we'll try our best.
I looked at him and Uncle Alfred, thinking, there's no need to, as I've already got 2 amazing dads.
No! Now take your stinking money and get off my ship! It really wasn't our day. He was the 5th guy to reject us already. No one seemed to want to go to that island. Oh, hi there. Julia here. It's been 2 years since my dad strangely vanished into thin air while on a business trip. He just disappeared. But even when the authorities confirmed he'd passed away, I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was still alive somewhere out there. So I've still been looking for him ever since. In fact, just a few days ago, I found a clue. You see, I'm studying at the Archaeological Institute, where I happened to find an ancient map of some treasure hidden on a deserted island. Sounds wild, right? Well, it gets crazier. Right at the exact spot where the treasure was marked on the map was a symbol of a swallow. My dad's signature swallow, and his initials RC were written there too. Could it be? There was no time to waste. So that's how I ended up here in a fishing village close to that island with my best friend Lily. She's tagged along because she was so worried about me going alone, which was sweet of her. You see, there was a rumor among the locals that the island was cursed. Apparently, anyone who dared to venture there disappeared without a trace. That's why it's named the Lost Isle. But there was one ship that had returned from there intact, Captain Black Bill's. On returning, he told the locals that surrounding the Lost Isle were reefs with super fast currents, so most ships ended up shipwrecked. The souls of those who died there were trapped years after years and became wicked spirits guarding the island from strangers. But fortunately for Black Bill, he happened to have a charm of the goddess Amphitrite to protect him from all the storms at sea. And it actually worked. Anyway, Lily and I decided he was the man for the job, so we went to the local pub to find him.
"Give me another rum and coke, will ya?"
he said between hiccups. The man was already drunk. I then asked him if he could take us to the island, but the barman chimed in.
"Oh, come on. Only fools dare to go near the Lost Isle."
But isn't it safe to go with Black Bill? I heard he's protected by a goddess or something.
"That's right."
Black Bill suddenly raised his voice.
"But the charm only works when you're out at sea. Stepping onto that island is another matter. Besides, the spirits guarding that island are terrifying. I'm not insane enough to go back there. So the answer is no."
I wasn't about to give up, though. How much do you want?
50,000 and I'll take yas.
He laughed. His words left us dumbfounded. Let's just go home. This was a waste of time. He's obviously trying to steal our money. 50 grand? Where on earth could we find that amount of money? But I'm so close to my dad now. I can feel it. I can't give up halfway. Suddenly, I had an idea. Actually, we wanted to go to the island to find an ancient treasure that's worth way more than $50,000. If you take us, we'll split the treasure. What do you say?
Ha! How do I know you're not bluffing?
He said. So I showed him the map. It took him a few minutes, but eventually he shook my hand and the deal was set. Then he said we needed to set off as soon as possible. Otherwise, other people would try and beat us to the treasure. So, early the next day, we boarded his ship, the Siren. And I'm not gonna lie, we were both pretty scared. The other sailors were quite rough, and only one of them stood out as he smiled brightly at us. He then came over and offered to help carry our luggage. He was just so sweet compared to the others.
What's so funny? I'm Skylar, by the way.
Oh, nothing. It's just, you don't really seem like you belong here.
Well, I don't have much choice. My dad's the captain.
They're related? But he seemed nothing like Black Bill. He could clearly see I was surprised as he said,
Everyone reacts like that. It's true. I don't look much like him, do I?
Ahem. I turned around, realizing Lily was just standing there waiting for us. She had a smirk on her face and wouldn't quit teasing me as Skylar led us to our room. Since when did you change your type to sailor boys? I just shook my head, laughing. I mean, he was cute, but that wasn't the point of the trip. We settled in, but that night I couldn't sleep at all. I decided to go up on deck for some stargazing. It was eerily quiet out there, but I suddenly heard a sound coming from the other side of the ship. I quickly went to see and found Skylar leaning on the rail. He's probably having trouble falling asleep too. So we ended up chatting all night, and I told him why I had to get to the Lost Isle. He looked me in the eyes and said,
I'm sure you'll find your dad. I know you can do it.
He seemed so sincere and warm. It actually made my heart skip a beat. By noon the next day, we had reached the island, and it was just as terrifying as Black Bill had said it would be. Rows and rows of jagged rocks rising out of the sea, with the waves crashing so high, I thought we'd be shipwrecked in a second. The ship was shaking so violently, I really didn't think we'd make it. But we did. After almost colliding with the rocks a few times, we eventually made it through, and I've never been happier to see land before. However, there were still many challenges ahead. The first night on the island, I was curled up in my tent when a sound of footsteps coming from outside woke me up. I quickly unzipped it to see who was there, and that's when I saw a dark figure rushing off into the bushes. I was so scared, I screamed and woke everyone up. After checking, we realized all our bags and food that we'd left outside had been stolen.
Perhaps the ghosts of this cursed island are trying to scare us away.
I felt Lily shiver beside me, while I tried my best to look unfazed. But Skylar suddenly spoke up.
What would ghosts do with food anyway? It was obviously some man. Monkeys? Yes, it was obviously monkeys. Right, son? In fact, they'll probably come back. So we best keep our eyes peeled.
For the rest of the night, we took turns guarding the tents. Then once the sun came up, we packed up our camp and continued on our journey across the jungle. Julia, are there really ghosts on this island? Ghosts aren't real, Lily. I started, but then I found myself screaming. My right leg dropped and suddenly I was falling into a hole. Luckily, Skylar was nearby and grabbed my arm just in time. I quickly looked down and saw there were dozens of sharpened wooden stakes at the bottom of the hole. What in the world? That wasn't the only trap, though. As we crossed the island, we all got stuck in a snare at some point. From net to rope leg traps, this cursed island has all the tricks up its sleeve. Luckily, no one got seriously injured, but it was still totally freaky. That night, I headed towards Skylar's tent to thank him for saving me, and as soon as he saw me, he pulled me into a hidden corner and said,
"There's something I need to tell you. I'm not Black Bill's real son." "Skylar!"
Black Bill suddenly shouted from a distance.
"Come here! Right now!" "I'll talk to you later. Hide that compass, and don't tell anyone."
Before I could even begin to understand what was going on, he'd left. Another shock hit me as I saw the swallow symbol alongside my dad's initials engraved onto the lid. Huh? How did he get this? Did Skylar know my dad? A billion questions flooded my mind, but by then, Skylar had already gone guarding the campsite with his dad. The next morning, after basically no sleep, I decided I had to find Skylar and get some answers. As I was looking around for him, a group of strangers landed from the trees. They were like some sort of jungle people, with bushy hair and beards and wore raggedy clothing. They surrounded our camp and started threatening us. I was so scared, I couldn't move a muscle.
"Julia! Lily! Run!"
Skylar screamed, and I managed to snap out of it. I grabbed my bag in Lily's hand and ran after him and Black Bill. We eventually found a cave and took shelter there. It was hidden deep in the trees, and we prayed they wouldn't find us. We then only came out when we were sure they were gone. I asked if we should go find the rest of the crew, but Black Bill ignored my question and only had his mind on the treasure. Ugh! He was willing to leave his crew behind. What a cold-blooded man! And yet, I had no other choice but to continue the search. I couldn't risk being caught by those barbarians. I needed to find my dad. So I reluctantly pulled the map out, and we followed the directions. It led us to a stone temple in the middle of the island. One by one, we entered and went deep inside. Suddenly, Black Bill screamed. An arrow flew past him, just missing his cheek. Terrified, he turned pale, clutching his chest.
"Your treasure better be worth all of this, or else."
We continued on and saw a door. That's it! The treasure is behind this! Black Bill ran forward, throwing himself against the door. His patience was definitely wearing thin. While he worked on getting the door open, I looked around for more clues about my dad. Suddenly, I turned around to see Black Bill falling on his knees. He'd managed to open the door, but inside was just a room full of dusty, chipped, cobweb-covered vases.
"You tricked me! I risked my life to come to this hole of an island for nothing!"
Black Bill then swooped over to grab me. I struggled to get away from him. He was squeezing my neck so tight, I couldn't breathe. I looked to Skylar pleading for help, and he tried to calm Black Bill down.
"Oh, shut up! And you! Bring all your stuff over here, or this friend of yours will be in big trouble."
Trembling, Lily did as he said, begging him to spare me, but he only gave her a threatening look while tightening his arms around my neck. He signaled for Skylar to come get his things.
"No! Let her go!" "Oh, little Sky, did you forget about your mummy and daddy? You don't want them to get hurt, do you? I've done enough for you."
What were the two of them talking about? What was going on? My head was spinning, and with the suffocation, I gradually lost consciousness and passed out. When I woke up, I found myself on the Siren, surrounded by Lily, Skylar, and... Dad? Am I dreaming? Is it really you? My eyes blurred with tears. I rushed over and hugged my dad. Then I found out what had happened. As soon as I fainted, the horde of barbarians rushed in, captured Black Bill, and freed us all. Turned out, these people were all sailors, archaeologists, and explorers who had come to the island to look for treasure. When going through the reef, they were attacked by a group of pirates who robbed them of all their possessions and belongings. Then they were mercilessly dumped empty-handed on the island. That crew of pirates was none other than Black Bill's crew. All those legend tales about the island, including the amphitrite charm, were made up by Black Bill himself, thinking he could cover up his crimes by preventing people from approaching the island. Wow, that man was a real monster. I knew something was fishy about him. But luckily, taking the chance of the pirates setting sail to the island, the group of victims conspired to capture them and free themselves from the deserted island. As for Skylar, poor Skylar, he had been through so much. He was actually one of the victims. 2 years ago, he and his parents were also dumped on the island. Worrying that their young boy wouldn't survive, his parents begged Black Bill to let him be a part of the crew. Seeing that Skylar was strong and healthy, Black Bill agreed, on one condition that if he ever betrayed him, his parents would be executed. Thanks to Skylar, the victims were able to survive to this day. Every time the boat came near the island, he would sneak food and necessities into a barrel and let it float to shore. Smart move. Oh, and that's not all. When Skylar was on the island, he had met my dad, and they even had a talk before Skylar was about to get on board to join the crew.
Please, promise me, if you manage to escape, try to find my daughter, and give her this as a sign that I'm still alive and well live. I promise.
I couldn't believe it. It was all thanks to Skylar that I'd found my dad. He smiled at both me and my dad and said,
"See? I never break a promise."
Anyway, when the ship docked, the pirates were immediately arrested. As for the victims, they were finally reunited with their families. Now, a year has passed, and honestly, all this was still so surreal to me. My dad and I spent a large chunk of the past year setting up an organization to help the people who'd been stranded on the island reintegrate into society. Lily has actually been writing a book about our adventure. And as for me and Skylar, well, we're officially dating. Guess it wasn't such a cursed island after all. Right?
Oh, we couldn't make a tiny single profit this month. Again? Business is so slow these days. Oh no, it's already past 5? Gotta go pick up Lucy. I rushed over to Elena's house. She's my best friend. She often helps take care of my daughter Lucy so I can work extra hours. No matter how tough things were going for me, at least I still have Lucy. Even on the worst days, one look at her angelic smile, and I realize things aren't so bad after all. Why the long face? Has this month been as hard as last month? I nodded, sadly, and entered the house. It's been even worse. I just want to earn enough money to provide a nice life for Lucy, but I'm barely breaking even. I looked over at Lucy, who was playing with her dollies on the living room floor. I plopped down on the sofa while Elena brought me a cup of tea. Things will get better. I just know it. How about I read your tarot cards to see if things will improve for you? Yeah, right. Let's just assume those fortune-telling things are right. I'm not into the spiritual stuff, but Elena swears by it. I suppose it can't hurt to hear what she has to say, right? She made me shuffle the cards, then laid some out on the coffee table in front of me. Oh, that's interesting. Hey, Nora, seems like your life's going to change sooner than you think. Destiny is telling me that it'll be tomorrow after work at the bakery close to your shop. It looks like you'll meet a man, a rich one. I stared down at the cards. How on earth was she getting all this information from them? Yeah, whatever. Thanks for looking after Lucy, but I better take her home and make her dinner. Pfft, who would believe those fortune-telling tricks? But, come to think of it, I'm also desperate. With all the lockdowns and Brexit, my little candle shop in the south of England wasn't going so well of late. No amount of 2-for-1 offers or sales events were helping. I'm down to single digits on the money my parents lent me to open up the shop. Then there's Lucy to think of. In her 3 years of life, she has already been through so much, including her father abandoning us both. I want to provide an amazing life for her, not cause us both to end up homeless. I may as well do as Elena said. I mean, it's not like I had anything to lose. So the next day, I closed up the shop early, then with Lucy in tow, walked toward the bakery. There didn't seem to be anyone about. Looks like Elena was oh so wrong.
Oh, miss, I'm so sorry.
I brushed bits of pastry off me and glared at this man. Okay, so it looked like he's only a few years older than me, but why is he wearing such old-fashioned clothes? And what's with his awful hairstyle? This has to be the man Elena was talking about, right? But he's so not my type. But I suppose if dating him changes everything, then...
Oh, cute kid.
He pointed at Lucy, who was cuddling her favorite doll. Yeah, this is my daughter Lucy. Sometimes I swear she loves that doll more than me. She won't let it out of her sight. He chuckled, then nervously scratched his head and said,
You're a good mother, I can tell. Are you going this way?
He pointed up the street. I nodded, then started walking alongside him. Okay, so he's called Dylan. He's an engineer and he's just moved here for work. We exchanged numbers and you know what? We've been texting quite a lot. Soon we started hanging out and he's not so bad, albeit a little on the boring side. Lucy seems to adore him, though. He pulls silly faces to make her laugh and buys her sweets. He even took us both to the zoo. OMG, it was so good. And Lucy loved seeing the penguins. So when he told me he liked me and asked me out on a date, I said yes. Okay, so he's not my usual type, but he's rich, caring, and good with Lucy. Besides, it's all too much to be a coincidence, right? Elena's tarot reading must have come true, and he's the guy who's going to change my luck. Hey, all the romantic dates out to the restaurants and places were kind of fun. And even better, business was improving. This was great and all, but dating Dylan was getting kind of tiring. I like the guy. He's sweet and kind, but I don't have feelings for him. One time after a delicious meal, he walked me home. Then, on my doorstep, he gushed out about how much he liked me, then leaned in for a kiss. Panicked, I darted out of the way, causing him to trip over and almost fall into a bush. Another time, he took my hand when we were walking through the park. I then just stood there while he gave me this soppy look and said,
Nora, I really like you, and I know you like me too because you're not letting go of my hand.
It made me feel so awkward, so I just pretended I had something in my eye, then changed the subject. Good luck charm or not, I couldn't carry on like this anymore. So when Dylan surprised me at my shop with a bouquet of flowers which caused a bunch of wasps to swarm around me, I screamed at him, Please? I'm trying to work. Will you just leave me alone? Dylan looked hurt. Then he left. I felt really bad about it, but I just felt so suffocated by him. After that, Dylan and I stopped seeing each other, but as expected, my business started to go downhill again. Ugh, why? Why does it have to be him that makes everything work? But if it's really only Dylan who can help me make money, then maybe, then I'd continue dating him until the end of this winter. I mean, I did need money to provide for Lucy. As a peace offering, I decided to buy Dylan his favorite pastry from the bakery and surprise him with it. But as I was walking out of the bakery, I walked straight into someone. Dylan? Turns out he was also planning on surprising me, and he was just getting a pastry for Dutch courage. I invited him into my shop, and he handed me this gross gemstone bracelet. But I forced a smile, told him it was beautiful, and hugged him. Looks like we're back on. That night, I went home and placed the bracelet on the side. But then Lucy got a hold of it, and I noticed one of the gemstones on it was missing. So terrified she'd swallowed it, I spent all evening in A&E. Turns out it was a false alarm. Nice gift, Dylan. For the sake of my business, I may have had to date Dylan, but that didn't mean I couldn't see other guys too. So I joined this dating app and started talking to this cute guy called Austin. We gelled so well. So when he asked me out, I said yes. It was a harmless meetup. This wasn't cheating, right? Austin showed up and, I didn't want to compare, but Dylan was like a desert, while Austin was definitely the green oasis. But right when Austin and I stepped out of the cafe, we ran into Dylan on the sidewalk with another girl. So turns out we both wanted to find someone new? If so, maybe there was no need to wait until winter. So Dylan insisted on coming round, and naturally he wanted to know who Austin was. I mentioned how we were both seeing other people, so it was fine. But turns out the girl I saw with him was just a friend. It was time I was honest with him. So I told him how he was a good luck charm for my business, and that's why I continued to date him. He clutched his chest and gave me this heartbroken look. Then he just nodded and left. I felt really bad about it, but at least it was over now, right? I went back to raising Lucy the best I could, trying to salvage my failing business and dating Austin, but in the end it didn't work out with him. The weird thing is I found myself thinking about Dylan all the time. Just the cheesy things he said and his quirky ways. I couldn't help but think that if he was here now, life would be so much better. OMG, the realization hit me. I actually have feelings for Dylan. I tried texting and calling him, but he didn't answer. I suppose I couldn't blame him. So I went round to Elena's and confided in her. That's when she took my hands in hers and told me the shocking truth. Dylan is actually my cousin. He really has just moved to this town, and he is an engineer. But I made the fortune thing up. Actually, Dylan once saw you come over to pick up Lucy and liked you. So I decided to do some matchmaking. What? So all this time, it had all been a lie? My business didn't improve because of Dylan. It had just been a fluke? I was kind of mad with Elena, but I asked her for a favor. I'm so nervous. I got Elena to set this meeting up with Dylan. He thinks he's meeting her, not me. Oh, there he is.
Oh, it's you.
Dylan, I know I was horrible to you, and I'm sorry. Elena told me everything, and I don't care if my business could be better or worse, even though we both tricked each other. I know that I like you, and I just want you by my side. He gave me this questioning look. Then, seeing that I was being serious, he hugged me. So what now? Well, Dylan and I are back together. He's so great with Lucy, and guess what? My business is magically doing amazing again. Turns out it has nothing to do with magic or good luck charms or anything to do with Dylan, who not only recommended my little candle shop to all of his friends and clients, but also started up an awesome online marketing campaign for me. Sometimes happiness is right under our noses, but we still try to find it somewhere else. So my advice to you is to learn how to be happy with the things you already have, as, trust me, it's only when you lose them that you realize how amazing they were in the first place.
Hi, I'm Addison, but all my friends call me Addie. I'm just an ordinary girl who doesn't have any particular talents, but there is one thing I do have. That is... Oh, why don't we just watch the video to see what it is? This is my older sister, Olivia. She's beautiful, isn't she? She's also an amazing singer and has a talent for art. She can pretty much draw anything. I mean, I don't know how my parents could have such a perfect daughter like her, then have me. But I'm fine with that. Olivia was all about winning trophies and medals, while I was happy with the ice cream and ton of snacks my parents gave me for getting a B on my math exam. Hey, Addie, my baby. Guess who's got some new trendy clothes? Oh, Mom, Dad, I don't like these things. Why are you buying so much? It's such a waste of money. However, Mom's desperate look made me cave, so I reluctantly grabbed a random item and went to try it on. Oh, it's a crop top. I stared at myself in the mirror. Okay, so my parents' dumbfounded expressions made their feelings pretty clear. I looked ridiculous. See, I told you already. I'm way too short to wear tops like this. Right at that moment, Olivia walked by. I immediately ran over to her. I think you should have this top. It'll bring out your nice figure. You'll look so cute in it. Mom shook her head. No. If Olivia wears this, everyone will see her navel. Isn't that the point of crop tops? Then Dad chimed in.
Anyway, Liv, where are you off to in such a hurry? It's not that nonsense model club again, is it? Speaking of clubs, is the school dance club still recruiting? You should join. You'll get in for sure.
My sister rolled her eyes, then left, slamming the door behind her. I loved my sister, but she just seems to find me annoying. She was like the ice queen, always shutting me out. She never allows me to borrow her clothes or to touch her stuff. And if I ever try to go into her room, she freaks out. It's not that she's mean as such, but she tends to act like I don't even exist. It's okay. I mean, I'm kinda used to it. I live my own life and she lives hers. So that's why when I got my first cell phone and started to use social networks, I didn't try to search for her profiles, though I knew she was on all those platforms. That evening, my mom asked me to go upstairs to call Olivia for dinner. No answer. So I began pushing the door open. She suddenly appeared from the bathroom and yelled, "Hey, what are you doing? You know you're not allowed in my room." I knocked, but you didn't answer. Mom says it's dinner time. She hissed at me and shooed me away. Ugh! Why did she have to treat me like I was some pest? The way she was so weird about her room was annoying. Maybe she was hiding something in there? Nah, probably I was just overthinking this. Olivia was always like this. Life went on, and my sister, well, she continued to distance herself from me. But then one weekend, I walked downstairs to find her cheerfully humming a song as she danced around the kitchen. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "Morning, sis. Come sit here. I made you breakfast." Okay. This was weird. I cautiously sat down and kept looking at her. Why are you so happy? And where are Mom and Dad? Mom and Dad just rushed off on some work thing. Then she put the plate in front of me, grinned, then continued. Mom made cookies this morning and told you to take them to Grandma's. Tell her I said hi. Oh, you're not coming with me? No can do. Sorry, I've got work to do. She continued to look at me, and I got the feeling she wanted me to hurry up. Before I'd even finished my toast, she passed me my jacket and bundled me out of the door. Having no choice, I made my way to Granny's while in deep thoughts about how odd this was. Until I realized that I didn't even have the cookie bag with me. I'd left it at home. Gosh! I immediately rushed back. But, why was there a strange car parked outside my house? I lingered back and watched as a middle-aged man got out of the car. Before he even got to the door, Olivia opened it and smiled at him. I dove behind a bush so I could carry on watching. Huh? Why was he handing her flowers and a gift box? She happily took them from him and even leaned into his ear and said something. Oh my God! So this explains my sister's strange behavior. They're a couple, aren't they? I never thought that my sister would be interested in an old man like this. Shocking. But wait, what if he's deceiving her? As Olivia may look sharp, but she's actually very innocent. If that was the case, I would beat him black and blue. But this was just my speculation. I can't hastily act without knowing the truth. So I decided not to let them know that I was there, and quietly entered the house through the back door to get the cookie bag. Later that day when I arrived home, my sister was back to her Ice Queen self. She was cooking in silence, so I told her Grandma said hi, and she just grunted and carried on stirring her soup. I needed to find out what was actually going on. The perfect opportunity arose a few weeks later, when Mom and Dad went away on a weekend trip. I told Olivia I was meeting some friends for a picnic, but this was a lie. I actually hid in my faithful hiding spot and watched. As expected, the old man showed up and Olivia let him inside. The door was ajar, so I tiptoed inside and heard them laughing in the living room. I peeked in, and to my astonishment, my sister was sitting on the couch wearing the weirdest outfit ever. It was those kinds of clothes that only catwalk models wear, and most of all, she had this heavy makeup on and looked like a totally different person. The strange man was sitting next to her. Both of them were looking at her phone and laughing happily. Oh gosh, now everything was clear. From her reserved nature to her seemed-to-be secret room, it was all so she could continue to hide this age difference love story. I didn't know how to react now. I just kind of felt bad for her because she had to hide it. I mean, this was her home, and we were her family. We might not have been close, but she was my big sister. and I wanted her to be happy. If this love was real, then I fully supported her. And if this guy turned out to be bad, well, then I'd protect her to the end. My parents returned that evening, so I set up a family movie night. A great idea for family bonding, right? I chose a romantic movie in which the main actress is much younger than her boyfriend. In the middle of the movie, I turned to my parents and asked, "Mom, Dad, if you were their parents, would you allow that relationship?" They gave me confused looks. Then Dad immediately asked,
"Hey, Addie, don't tell us that you're in love with an old man, huh?"
This startled me, but before I could say anything, the doorbell rang. I was about to go open the door, just to avoid answering Dad's question, but Olivia was faster. Not long after that, she turned back and shouted at me,
"Addie, how dare you touch my phone?" "What's up, Liv? Who's at the door?"
"Go ask your dear daughter Addison." She gave me a dirty look, then stormed up to her room. My parents immediately bombarded me with loads of questions.
"What's happening here? Who was the one ringing the bell? Why that manner of Olivia?"
Okay, the one who rang the bell was Olivia's boyfriend. So, earlier, when Olivia left her phone in the kitchen, I noticed that there was a message from a man named Henry Davis. I immediately searched for him on Facebook and found out that this was the same guy who'd been visiting her. So, I used her phone to text him, telling him to come around at 8 p.m. I thought it would be better if Olivia could make her relationship public with our parents. But, Hayes, it seems she didn't take it very well. Anyway, now I had no choice but to tell my parents everything. Their faces dropped, and without saying anything, they ran upstairs and banged on Olivia's door. But there was no reply. Instead, all of us heard a rattling sound from the back door, and Olivia had fled. Our parents' faces turned red, while I felt so guilty as I not only wasn't able to help her, but only worsened the situation. The next day, Olivia still hadn't returned. She also didn't show up for school, which caused my parents to freak out. Then I suddenly thought of Henry. Right. Why didn't I think of asking him from the beginning? So I immediately contacted Henry and asked him to help find Olivia. That afternoon, when I just got home from school, I saw Henry driving off. There was a note stuck to the door saying Olivia was fine, with an address below, and it also said if we come there at 9 a.m., we'll see Olivia. The next morning, we showed up earlier than scheduled. Huh? It was a studio, and just like Henry said, Olivia was there. She looked so glamorous and was so busy prepping for a photo shoot that she didn't seem to notice us. Henry welcomed us and started explaining everything that made my parents, as well as me, speechless. Turns out, the truth was far from what I thought. He was not her boyfriend. Instead, he's her manager. He saw Olivia's potential and guided her to become a photo model and a TikToker. The flowers and gifts were from the brand she was working with. And the other day, she wore that outfit and makeup for a TikTok video. After the shoot was over, we walked over to her. But she took one look at us and ran away. I managed to catch up with her, then said, "Sis, why didn't you just tell us the truth? We're your family. We'll always be on your side."
"On my side? Really? You have no idea what it's like to be an outsider. It doesn't matter how many competitions I win. I'm invisible, while you get praised for just getting an okay grade on a math test. I want to be a model, but they don't want that for me. They want me to be miserable. I'd rather leave that house to do what I love."
I was dumbfounded, and so were Mom and Dad, who by this point had caught up with us and heard everything she'd just said. Dad hugged Olivia, then in an emotional voice said,
"Olivia, it's not that we forbid you from doing what you want. We were just worried for you. We just know that this industry can be complicated, and we don't want you to get hurt." "That's right. And it's not true that we love Addie more than you. You just excel at everything, and we just didn't want Addie to feel insecure. We're really sorry, Olivia. We all love you."
"Oh no, Mom, don't worry. I never felt that way. Actually, I've always admired Olivia, and it made me sad when she ignored me. Olivia burst out crying, and our whole family hugged each other tightly.
Sorry to interrupt, but you must have had some idea about Olivia being an internet star already, right? I mean, it's easy to tell from her social networks.
I shyly said, I don't follow any of her accounts. I thought she just wanted me out of her way. Henry then patted my head and showed us Olivia's social media accounts. And wow, she had millions of views and followers. We all watched some of her TikTok videos together, and she totally rocked it. Seeing how much this meant to her, my parents came round to the idea of her being a model, and they even thanked Henry for helping her. Then Olivia came closer to me.
Hey, Addie. I'm sorry for being so cold in the past. Turns out, you love me so much and will support me regardless. At least now, if I really fall in love with an old man, I don't have to worry, right?
Then everyone laughed. Oh, even though my plan didn't, go exactly as intended, I still call it a success, because it all ended out great in the end. You thought it was all finished, huh? Nope, not yet. There's one more thing I want to show you guys. That night, for the first time, Olivia let me go inside her room. Wow, it was like a mini studio with expensive flashlights, a ring light, and a camera. And her clothes and makeup collection were super impressive. Oh, do you remember what I said at the beginning of the video about being an ordinary girl? Well, that hasn't changed. But now I can confidently say that there is one thing I do have, and that's an awesome big sister who loves me unconditionally.